Welcome, everyone, to the Project Business Foundation's interview series. My name is Martin Berneburg, and I'm the co-founder and CEO. And for today's event, I'm joined by Oliver Lehmann, the president of our organization. So, hello, Oliver.
Hi, Martin.
Together, we have the great pleasure today to welcome Sunil Prashara, president and CEO of the Project Management Institute. Sunil, a very warm welcome, and thank you so much for being with us today.
Martin, it's a real pleasure. Thank you very much. Hi, Oliver. How are you?
Hi, Sunil. Great to have you here.
Thank you.
Sunil, when studying your profile, one can see that you have a lot of experience in corporate management. How much of this experience is related to project management?
Yeah, I would say that right throughout my whole career, I wouldn't say I was a formal project manager, but right from day one, leaving university, perhaps even before, I've been involved in projects, and I had a career that spanned a number of disciplines. I started off in finance, and when I was in finance, I was doing projects because I was doing a month end, I was doing year end, I worked my way up to becoming the CFO and doing all sorts of, IPO work, etc. They were all projects. I didn't realize at the time, but, regular stream of projects on a monthly basis. And then I moved into sales, had a fantastic career in sales, and every sales engagement is a project in some way, shape or form, right the way from when it starts at the beginning, and you have an opportunity all the way through all the different stakeholders you have to manage to eventually get the customer to say yes. And 9 times out of 10, they're saying no, and you're trying to fight this, situation. So I found that each and every time it was the same kind of consistent journey that you went on in sales. Then in operations, I worked in Accenture for a little while, where I led lots of projects on the other side. I was a consultant, and I was undertaking programs like implementation of an ERP system, or putting a CRM system in place, or helping an organization transform. These were all programs, but from a completely different perspective. Now all of a sudden, my client was expecting me to be the person with the thought leader, to coordinate, chaperone all the different stakeholders, make sure they're all aligned in the right place, keep the business motivated and understanding of what we're trying to do. And then so having been in an operational role, running programs and projects, then having been in finance roles and sales roles and operational roles, and then also on the other side of the fence, it put me in a great sort of a space where I could, apply for CEO type roles. And it's my second CEO. I started my own company. That in its own right was a project as well. I didn't realize at the time that that's a project, a very complicated one. It's one where you don't know what the end is going to be. So it's not like a waterfall type. It is truly an iterative project, and you pivot as appropriate during that. And that brought me to PMI, which has been an incredible series. I mean, obviously, I've now been sheep dipped in the world of project management, and I understand that a lot of what I've been doing for many, many years, for the whole 30-odd years of my career, is some form of program, some form of project, some form of initiative, with the degrees of consistency across it all, but some kind of method, some kind of framework, but then enough to allow me to be innovative and creative as well. So I guess, in answer to your question, yeah, a fair degree of multifunctional expertise. And I do believe that the world is moving more and more to this place. I think that you're seeing, especially from the youth, a desire not to specialize in one specific siloed function, but to actually be able to move around, from one functional part of an organization to another, perhaps even one organization to another. In my day, if you spent more than 5 times 4 different roles and 4 different jobs, employees would look and say, this guy can't hold a job. I think that's changed now. I think that kids today are encouraged to work and have different experiences in different functions and in different organizations, because enterprises are looking for holistic people who can connect the dots, who appreciate the user at each of the different functional areas and define programs and projects and effectivity to affect change. That's what we call the project economy. And that's what we mean by the project economy, the ability to be able to move, have the skill sets that allow you to move in a consistent and execute in a consistent way, regardless of whether you're in finance or HR or legal, etc. And that's kind of like replicates, mirrors what's happened to me in my career.
That's interesting, Sunil. I'd like to dig a bit deeper into your time when you did customer projects. Some people say customer-facing projects. When you had projects that were not just changing things in organizations and strategy, new product services, and all these great things. But when your job was to bring money home with a project, when you had a project that was a profit center for the own organization, a cost center, of course, for the customer, but a profit center for the own organization. What are your takes on that from your experience?
So couple of good question, because depending on the organization, I spent 10 years with Perot Systems, which is an outsourcing organization run by Ross Perot. And then I spent 7 years or so, 6 years with Accenture, also executing on programs. And you know, Accenture is much more mature in terms of its life cycle to Perot, and so therefore had huge numbers of programs that they were doing across the globe for masses of customers. And so they were very defined in the way they would engage on a project or a program to start with. So they were very diligent in making sure that they had evaluated what needed to be done, and that what needed to be done was going to have an economic return, and they would ensure that there was an economic return, not just for Accenture or for me as an individual, but also for the enterprise. Otherwise, there's no point in doing it. And in Perot Systems, very simple. It was an outsourcing organization. If you had an IT services function that cost $100 million, the value proposition was Perot would be able to do that for $80 million, the same work, bring the same people on board, but they would be able to shape, optimize workflows, technology, and maybe do some offshoring, etc., to reduce that cost base down to 80, which is very exciting for the customer. But of course, then Perot needed to make money. So in reality, they would want to drop it down, not from 100, but down to probably 60. So that's a huge drop and a huge commitment, of that 60 cost, 20 they would also charge as a profit, and then 80 and 20 is a saving to the customer. So before you even got into a very complex project, it was very, very important to do the right due diligence. And I have been in situations, one in India, where there was a massive undertaking that we were contemplating, and I was going to be the client partner. It was huge, 900 people, huge commitment to the end customer. And we looked at the economics, and we realized it can't be done. Under the circumstances, under the contractual obligations, under the contract, despite the fact that we would love to have this person as a client, despite the fact it was a fantastic brand name, the expectations for us, for what was expected, was not going to be, we wouldn't be able to achieve it, and we would end up damaging ourselves and the relationship. So it was a tough decision. We had to walk away. And in that particular organization, there are many other programs, so it's probably just a rounding error for them that we had that confidence to walk away. But for startup organizations, that's a very tough decision to make, because it may be your biggest opportunity. It may be the one that would open up, and you may even say, I might end up operating at a loss on this, and if I can afford it, I might still want to do it because there's an economic reason behind it. So these are considerations outside of the delivery and execution. That comes with its own risk, but getting yourself in to a situation where you've kind of signed on the dotted line, you're committed. Mm-hmm. So it will be what it will be, and nobody really knows what the outcome is going to be. You can control it as best you can, but you don't really know, no matter how expert you are in doing something, and no matter how many times you've done it, anything can happen. Just think about every time you have an extension built on your house, double your budget, whatever it is, there's always something you want to change where the light is, or change where the door is, or whatever. So getting into the situation to start with, I think, is my big lesson learned, Oliver, is to really focus hard on what obligation that you're signing up for. Make sure that you've got the ducks on your side, and you understand the risks.
one of the things we observe is that too many project managers don't even know the contract, either with a customer if they are on contractor side, or with their contractors when they are on customer side. They are not part of the development process. They are not given time to read it. They don't have the understanding of the language to understand when they read it, so they don't really know it, but it's their job to ensure that the own organization meets contractual obligations. I'm 100% with you.
Yeah, I would add, I mean, again, if you work for a large organization, then you probably have the resources where people can come and do that for you. But when you have your own organization, you have to be CEO, you have to become a CFO, you have to be legal person, you have to be all of those things. And in fact, as a startup or as a smaller organization, it's even that much more important to have those holistic skills.
Absolutely.
Because you can't rely on others. And so, yeah, I would agree that, having some, you need to know those skills in advance, because getting involved early on with trying to shape and design a solution for a customer is important, and working with the customer is super important as well. So I would agree.
Let me ask another question before we dig deeper into that, which is a fascinating topic. I was a member of PMI, and I'm still a member of PMI. I've been with PMI for over 20 years. I'm still a volunteer in Hamburg.
Good man.
Yeah, and there's one thing I noticed over all these years. We as PMI have always been a very American company. It was very American driven. If you read procurement management section in
Sure.
the PMI guide, there are a lot of statements there that are true in America and USA. They are no more true in Germany, in Italy, in France, in Sweden or so. And the culture of PMI also was a very American culture. Now you came in here. You are located in UK. Your family has roots in India. You were born, as you told me, in Africa, and so a lot of internationalism is coming in, which I think is extremely challenging. And the first two things that cross my mind on that is time zones, of course, and the other thing is culture. So how do you deal with this challenge?
Yeah, great question. And, it's part of the reason what attracted me to PMI, and the desire for PMI to really reach out to, it's a global organization. Yes, it's got its roots, as you say, in North America, but frankly, a very big part of our influence is sitting in China now, and in India, and in Latin America, and Europe, of course. So I was super attracted to that because my whole career has been extremely international. I lived 7 years in Singapore. I lived in south of France for 5 years. I lived in Utrecht in Holland for 5 years. I really traveled around the world. I worked for Nokia. I was the global head of sales for Nokia. I was traveling around all over the place and working with telco organizations from everywhere, from China to Latin America to Middle East, you name it. And I was so pleased that one of the key criteria that the board were looking for was to have somebody who had an international perspective on not only business, but culturally as well. So I was very lucky because I think I ticked both of those boxes. I speak a few languages too. And so from my own credentials, I think that there was a nice fit in that space. But the other good thing about the board is they truly were keen to move the organization closer to all the operations around the world. And of course, we've got all the I think for your audience, we have 300 chapters around the world, 12,000 volunteers. They're not all American. There's a complete mix, all those chapters are spread all across the 200 odd countries. And so, we wanted to reach closer to them. My first visit actually was to Singapore, and I met some of the folks from the Singapore chapter. And the president said to me, when we ask for something and we need help, by the time that voice gets to Philadelphia, where our headquarters is, it's a whisper, because 300 other chapters have all asked for something, and by the time it gets to headquarters, there's a list, and the list is 300 asks, maybe more long, so we're just one line in there. But when the headquarters say, hey, you know what, we'd like you to change your color from blue to green, by the time that voice gets to Singapore, it's really loud. It's like someone's shouting it at you, yeah, you must get this done. So there was a disconnect between what was actually happening in the regions, the regions, and what's happening in GHQ. So whilst the aspirations were the same, the intent was the same, there was a disconnect, and we were not being able to get closer. The first thing I did was kick off this regional model. So we have a regional model now, which we're implementing, where we have managing directors that represent 8 different regions. We're soon to announce one for Europe shortly, but all the other regions we have, China, India, Latin America. And those roles, that they have 3 responsibilities. The first one, obviously, is to look at ensure that we are a sustainable enterprise as PMI within the region. Secondly, to ensure that we get very, very close to our chapters and our volunteers and the communities in that space. It's absolutely critical, so their voice is heard. And the third thing is to start taking on components of our operations, that may be better suited in that region. So, for example, why do we have marketing sitting centrally when we might want to have, each region has a different way that people engage, and we may want to have more localized activities and administration activities. So that's one of the things that we're doing. On the culture side, I mean, that's super important. As we get more and more diverse as enterprises and organizations, and because we're now living in a kind of in a VUCA world and everybody's virtual, many of the teams that I'm working with are across the globe, and we've had to learn how to manage time zones. I have to say that I'm very lucky that I live in London, because, or you could say unlucky, because it means that early morning it's all Singapore, India, China, Australia. During the day, normal daytime, it's Europe and Middle Earth, if you like. And then when I'm just ready to drop and fall asleep, all of a sudden the emails start flying in from Latin America and America. So from a time zone is a problem. It's a challenge. It means that in a virtual world, it means you can literally be on 24/7. You can be on, and the challenge really relies on having an appreciation and empathy for the people that you're working with in all these different regions, and they having the same level of empathy and appreciation for your workload as well. So, in specific answer to your question, time zones is a challenge, but I think it's we figured out a way how to work 24/7 over the course of the last 150 days.
Certainly makes sense, and I'm glad that you started speaking about the developments and the changes in PMI. Basically, 2 of the core activities of PMI have always been standardization and certification.
Yes.
Over the years, a great number of offerings has been developed, and some of them seemingly in competition with each other. Will we see any consolidation? And if yes, what will it look like? What will be the product range, so to speak?
Yeah, so I would say that's actually a really good question, and we could talk a lot about that actually right now. So the first thing is, I mean, obviously PMI, 50-year-old organization, cut its teeth in core, waterfall methodology. Yes, we've got standards, and we've become, the global standard. A lot of organizations look at the PMP and they say, well, whilst we can't guarantee that the individual is going to be a stellar project manager, he's or she has achieved the PMP. It's a tough exam. You need to know your content to be able to do that. Plus, you need to have some degree of experience. So there's a strong probability that the person's going to be pretty good at doing what they want them to do. So whilst it doesn't guarantee that they're the world's best project manager or anything like that, it does certainly give you some degree of comfort. And most organizations, when they're hiring people, right, they don't know. I am a chartered accountant, but don't give me your books to do anymore. The last time I did that accounting was 10 years ago. So, but I'm a chartered accountant, right? And I'm proud of it. And I understand if someone throws a P&L at me, I can ask the hard questions. I can do that quickly. But don't ask me to go and do the month end anymore or take a company to IPO. I may not be able to do that anymore. So the standards and the certifications are credentials, right? And those credentials you have to take on one side. What we want to be is we want to be the go-to place for all things project. And for me, the word project is synonymous with the word work, because I do think that projects, whether it's a project or a product, or whether it's waterfall, whether it's agile, at the end of the day, it's all about getting work done in the most efficient way that can be adopted by whether you're doing it for a customer or you're doing it for yourself. So it can be adopted and can add value to your life or to your customer or to your enterprise or to what you're trying to do. That's what it is. And I can tell you from an experience, right, that, so with that said, you know, we cut our teeth in one methodology, which was around waterfall, and there are many other things that are out there. We have our ACP certification, but we felt that we weren't as strong. We didn't have as strong a point of view in the agile space with just the one ACP certification. And we could have done one of two things. We could have gone out and invested and built our own point of view, or we could have said, okay, who's got the best point of view we believe that is close to what we do, that we could go out and acquire. And that's why we acquired Discipline, Agile, and Flex, because that enterprise, that organization is really advocating that yes, you have Agile, but they're more interested in different ways of working and choosing your own way of working, which could be a hybrid. It could be using our traditional way of working. It could be a very structured, standardized, you know, way of working framework, or it could be not. And it really sort of coaches people in understanding the context in which you're in today and of choosing the right tool set, the right capabilities, the right skill sets to help you achieve what you're trying to do, not being so structured in a specific way. And why we liked it is because whilst it might be grounded in the world of IT and applications development, the principles that Discipline Agile was bringing is actually transportable into other enterprises, into other functional areas like HR, like finance. So we're looking very hard at building a nimble way of executing. I won't use the word agile, a nimble way, but an agile way of working in the finance department, in the HR department, in the sales department. And what we do see then is, so it's not competition, we're trying to make it complementary. Now, there are places where we've got, for example, ACP and DA. I've had a lot of questions about that. You know, hey, what's going to happen to my ACP? Well, ACP is a great certification. It truly is. And Discipline Agile is as well. And there are bits where they kind of overlap and and we're looking at that now. And we will have a journey. So the way we are looking at DA is a set of certifications, taking you to, if you like, the coach, the person who can coach other people. And there will be stages to get you there. And ACP will fit into that somewhere. Now, I've got a good idea where it fits right now, but I'm not the expert in this. We've got the experts, we've got fantastic experts that are working with us on this. And very shortly, you know, we will have within a couple of months, actually, we will be announcing the framework, the journey that you can go on, which brings ACP in line with the journey that we want to go. So it's completely relevant, will stay relevant. It's a superb introduction to the world of Agile, and with Discipline Agile, we'll take it we're hoping to take it to another level. And what that will do for us is give us a complementary set of products, so that when we are approaching what we want to do, our aim is, as I said, to be the go-to place for the best practices, the best experiences, the lessons learned, the standards, you know, we're an independent organization. We're not for profits. We're not linked to anyone else. There's no vested interest other than to make our members and the community that we serve more enabled. That's what we're trying to do. So, and you know, helping people choose their way of working, because context counts, and that's what we're trying to do. So you might find a few little bit of areas where we're stepping on our own toes. The classic is ACP and DA. We're addressing that. There are other places too, and there are other opinions too. But we're pretty firm in directionally where we want to go, and most of our 99.9% of our community appreciate that and are there with us and are helping us shape it collectively. So it's good.
Cool. Can you give us a rough idea as to when you foresee this all falling into place and becoming one clean product line?
Yeah, so it's fair to say that right now it's on the DA side, on the Discipline Agile side, so that's an acquisition, and we had to, and the acquisition was actually a consulting firm. So we are not envisaging yet. We might do a little bit, but we're not envisaging PMI becoming a consulting firm. That's not what we do. We don't know how to set up an SLA, and we wouldn't know how to, you know, we'd have to use third parties to do it. We're going to use third parties. Why are we doing it? You know, so when we bought Discipline Agile, it was a consulting firm, and but their content, their IP, was super exciting to us because what they were using as their method resonated totally with what we wanted to do. So we've spent, and it's been a year. I get that it's been a year, but we've had a COVID situation in the middle of that, and we had a major transformation that we went through in 2019. So I would say that we're slow, but there's good reasons for why we've been slow. That we can, they're not excuses. They're absolute reasons of transformation going on, and COVID-19 that has delayed us somewhat. Mm-hmm. Plus, we've had to pivot from DA's core go-to-market to a completely different one, to one where it's creating standards, it's creating certifications, to a more of a product-based organization. So there's been a lot of activities going on in the background. We have to now bring it all together, which we're doing. And I think within the next couple of months, we will issue out a framework that shows this is the framework and what you should expect to happen over the course of the rest of 2020. And we should be, you know, we already have certifications out there, you know, CDI and etc. They're already out there, but we're going to bring them into a journey, which at the moment is also fragmented. So when we do that, I think within a couple of months, you should have that for everyone to see. And then we'll build from there.
Great.
To add my perception, no, PMI is not slow at all. It goes in a breathtaking speed, and it's often very hard for members, for volunteers, for fanatics to follow it all in real time, what's going on. But I understand when you're the driver of change, it always feels slow and always looks slow, much slower than for everyone else. And my experience is, this is now my fourth startup that I have. The fourth time that I start up a new organization, including the third was my own self-employed.
And you still have your hair
as a trainer.
How have you done that? How have you managed to keep all your hair?
Yeah,
startup.
But the thing is, it feels so slow. Whatever you do, you have the impression it takes so long to achieve something, and then half a year, year later, you look back and you say, "Hey, it's incredible what you have achieved."
Yeah, I do look back at 2019, and it's not until you're right. You're absolutely right, Oliver, because while you're in the middle of it, you don't realize, you know, you're frustrated, you're running, you've got 100 things going on at the same time, and the year just like flies by. It's not until you stop at the end of the year or perhaps at the end of your project and you look back and you say, okay, where were we and where have we got to? Yeah. I'm particularly proud of where my first year at PMI. We were really gearing ourselves up for tremendous growth. We had initiated our expansion of our product suite through acquisition and also developing some of our own ideas and thoughts. We'd moved to the regional model. We started to look at a lot of different areas. We implemented a new ERP system. We did so much internal infrastructure work. It was incredible. We were just shocked, as 99.9% of the world was, with the consequences of COVID, and which has been extremely sad and disturbing and anxious period for all of us. And I hope everybody on the call is safe and their families are safe.
We had the same experience. We set up a new association and hope people to come, and then we find them being consumed with their time, attention, money, of course, as well. Yeah,
that's right.
On the more defensive side, and we found it very hard. On the other hand, it sometimes gives you freedom to focus more on the things you want to achieve. You're less consumed by taking care for people with their needs because their attention is at the moment somewhere else. So,
well, one of the good news, I mean, there's not a lot of good news, but to talk about. But there's one thing which I think that I certainly believe in and that is, especially for your community that's listening in, is that, you know, whilst today many organizations are really thinking hard about how they're going to reinvent and reboot and the new norm and all these new buzzwords that people are using about what the future of work is going to be like. That's great when they're sitting there at home putting PowerPoint presentations together and thought processes together. But at the end of the day, you know, those chief strategy officers or those transformation folks or those senior leaders who decide that this is where we're going to go, someone is going to have to do the work. You know, and you know, to convert that idea, that perception, that PowerPoint, and convert it into reality. And that could be a pivot of the organization. It could be a massive wholesale transformation. It might be something, a change from one location to another. It could be anything. And, you know, I think that what that means is I do see a proliferation of project work as organizations stand themselves up very different to the way they have been in the past. We're seeing that across every single industry, across every single sector, every country. So whilst right now there's a fair degree of you know, project work that's been put on hold, I do think that it will come back, and it will come back bigger because organizations will expect their entire organization to be, you know, every employee to have some degree of delivery execution capability. So, you know, the market for project management skills is gonna go bigger because more people will be expected to have that as a complementary skill in whatever they do, whether they're a finance person or a salesperson. You know, they'll need to understand, how do you make things happen? And that's a great opportunity for people who are project professionals and who are providing services to others, because they'll be able to go faster when they know that the community that they're serving also has a degree of understanding of how work gets done. Because often what you find with consultants and contractors is that the person doesn't really know how to address this thing. So that holds you back because you're having to continuously bring those people on board with you. And we saw in Brightline that not bringing employees on board with you is one of the key reasons why transformations and projects fail, because people didn't adopt the change. So I think you'll see that change. So that's encouraging news, Oliver.
I have another takeaway from the COVID crisis. Without wanting to go too much into politics, but we see that some countries are faring fairly well and do a good job in containing the crisis, at least, and keeping the numbers small, and others do not such a good job. And my observation is it very much goes back to leadership. Countries where you have connective leaders, that people who connect with other leaders, coordinate with them, have joint approaches, come together and speak with each other and come out with solutions, joint solutions. These are the countries mostly that fare well in these crises. And where you have leaders who are less able to do that, they have much worse numbers. And actually, this leads back to the Project Business Foundation, because this is our core topic. It's the move from the cross-functional to the cross-corporate project. It's the move from the project that has executive sponsorship to a project where you have executive sponsorship distributed over several organizations. And these executive sponsors, they do not work in competition. Instead of competing, they look at completing and completing together. So that's really our topic. But I have another question for you again. Back to PMI, because you are the focal person, not we, and PMI is the focal organization at the moment. And PMI has standards that have become very essential in project business. One of them is the PMBOK guide, of course. Then you have the certification like the PMP that I'm proud to have had it for almost 20 years now. So, and not a single day I was unhappy with being a PMP. It was always helpful to me to be that. Knowing the PMBOK guide was helpful as a trainer, of course, but also when I was in different projects, mostly organizational development projects now. The strangest thing is it's all written for internal projects, but it is helpful for customer projects, customer-facing projects. Yeah. So, are there any advices that you can give us and our members, our audience, maybe to even get more benefit, get maximum benefit out of what comes from PMI?
Yeah. So first of all, I think that you know, from my experience, you know, PMI first of all has the standards. You know, the standard for project management. It has the guide for what we call the book of knowledge, the guide for project management. These are great tools, and what they allow you to do is they allow you to create a standard language, if you like, about how to operate. Now, when you work in very complex organizations where you have multi-stakeholders, multi-function, multi-geography, multi-time zones, it's good that people can at least have a consistent way of working and a consistent way of communicating. And so when you say you're at a certain stage, then everyone understands what that means and understand what's going to come and what's already happened. So I saw that working in fantastic fashion at Accenture. I saw it working great with McKinsey when I was at Nokia. And I see it working fantastically in our transformation that we have in PMI, where we're having a consistency and a framework and having a way of working that is consistent across the organization, certainly when it comes to management, and is very important. So I feel that the PMBOK guide and our standards help organizations to create that degree of consistency in language across their communities when they're working. That's the first thing. The second thing is, we touched on it earlier, in order to get the PMP, it's pretty tough. It's a tough exam. It's a tough set of requirements that you have to fulfill to have that. So it does give you a credential that you can show to prospective customers to say, well, hey, I've got this, coupled with my experience and the work that I've done and the references I've got, I'm a good choice to execute on the program and the project that's at hand. So it's not a guarantee, but it's certainly something that when you are confronted with, I'll give you an example. When large organizations are confronted with a big change that they have to do, let's assume they have to put an ERP system in place. They'll send out an RFP and they'll say, right, you have to fill this RFP out in exactly this form, in this certain way. Why? So that we can then, compare you to each other. Now, and so that we can do like for like, apples and apples. Now, the problem with that is I am Sunil and you are Oliver, and you approach things your way and I approach things my way. Why would you ask me to wear the same suit as you are wearing, fill in this form in exactly the same way, and then take away all the exciting things about Oliver, like his red glasses and his fantastic, persona, and why take all of the innovation away and just force the person to be make everybody wear the same color suit and then look for differences? That's illogical. It doesn't work, right? So the same thing applies. When you have a PMP, it gives you a little bit of differentiation. It shows to people that actually I have something. And when you are akin to the PMBOK, which is a globally recognized, book and guidance and tool set for you, then organizations can say, well, I can't guarantee it. I can look at all of the work that they've done in the past. I can go and do some references, and I see that they are well versed in this way of working. It's a good choice. It depends on price. It depends on the project. It depends whether they've done other things as well. So that's the first thing. And, look, it's globally recognized. Projects in the next, we did some research. We see 2.2 million new projects per year kicking off from next year, a year until 2027. That is just a phenomenal number of projects and programs and pieces of work that need to be done. It is nice if I was faced with having to do that for my country. Modi said that he's the project manager for India. That's the Prime Minister. He said, I am a project manager for project managing the transformation of India. He said that. One of his colleagues said that at our India conference last year. He said, Modi is actually, he might be the Prime Minister, but he's a project manager. If he probably has in his mindset a framework, a structure, a governance model that he can use to help him execute on a transformation of the Indian subcontinent. So that's the value of the PMBOK. That's the value of these standards. They without some kind of consistency in this space, it's very difficult to innovate. It's very difficult to be creative, because you then focus, because if the structure side of it has been taken care of, that frees up your mind to be very, very creative. And very rarely have I seen places where people are not using some kind of method where they've then gone on to then do innovation. Otherwise, it becomes chaos, right? So, and we're not in the business of chaos. And especially if you're a an organization that's providing a service, a project management service, you're executing on a program on behalf of a customer, for sure they want to see some degree of that, you know what you're doing and it's predictable. You can't keep going to them and saying, okay, well, I'll let you know next week. I'll let you know next week. It'll work once, twice, 3 times, but then it's done. Then they're going to lose. They're going to say, hey, you know, I don't get where you're going. So that's my answer to the value of the PMBOK and the standards.
Yeah, obviously, both Oliver and I agree. And with him being a PMP, me being a PMP, and a very high percentage of our community and our members being PMP certified, it's obvious that we are very much in agreement on this point. And the Project Business Foundation was started as a partner organization by dedicated and still highly active PMI volunteers. Since its founding, we've enjoyed collaborative initiatives with PMI, such as the development and publishing of the joint survey on the influence of the COVID-19 crisis on the project management community, as we just spoke about. What is PMI's take on the collaboration of the two organizations?
Well, first of all, you know, it's fantastic because it's kind of like a yin and a yang. We're coming up with the, you know, we're trying to enable the project manager with more skill sets, best practices, etc. And the vast majority perhaps are doing it for themselves within their organizations. And you're servicing a huge community, an industry of service providers, you know, who are actually monetizing the effort and providing additional capabilities, if you like, to complement the work that we're doing. So I really see that we could go and do a lot of things together. I'm very pleased. And to be honest, the world that you're operating in is very close to the world that I came from. So, you know, with Accenture and Perot Systems and whatnot, you know, and doing all sorts of transformation. So I have empathy for the community that you're trying to address. I know I was looking at your website, and there's this one side there that says, you know, these are all the challenges that you face. And I'm like, yes. As I went through all of those things, I've got the scars on my back on what you're saying here. It totally resonates. So I think that there's a lot we can do together. I'm very proud that we there's a lot going on. And I get phone calls and emails from lots and lots of people asking, can we collaborate? Can we do this thing? I'm very glad that I get that. It's not because of anything other than the amazing, you know, 50-year heritage of PMI. So nothing to do with Sunil. This is just what I was, you know, parachuted into, and I'm very proud of that. But what it does mean is that we have to sometimes we have to say, you know, no, because we've just got too much on our plate, and there's risk that we throw the baby out with the bathwater when we do that. But I'm so glad that we didn't do that with you guys, because we saw it and we were super busy, and you know, I'm glad that we engaged, and I'm sure we will go on and do a lot more together. So in fact, I'm convinced we will do that.
That is wonderful, and we are certainly ready to do that. No doubt about it. Addressing another thing, actually, you spoke of it earlier, trying to get that PowerPoint presentation that is reflecting a new and even great strategy for an organization, and turning that into something that is actually happening on the ground. You asked the question of who's doing the work. We see that PMI's Brightline initiative is setting out to do exactly that, and basically significantly improve the successful portation of organizations' strategies into delivery. Yeah. To what extent do you see early make or buy decisions, which define internal or cross-corporate projects, reflected in the 10 guiding principles of Brightline?
Yeah, so that's so Brightline is our approach to reaching out to the C-suite, and you know, much of the work of the C-suite is thinking future. It's obviously you have to handle what's happening day to day, but it's thinking future. The CEO is obviously thinking about where we're going to go as an organization, and you know, a big chunk of that responsibility falls onto the Chief Strategy Officer. Chief Strategy Officer's job is to really sort of shape, as you all know, you know, the direction and the vision of the company going forward, and to put that to some degree, a high level plan, if you like. But they're not the person that's going to actually do the work. You know, they kind of like throw it over the fence and say, there you go, Mr. Chief Transformation Officer, it's your baby. Or there you go, operations, it's your baby. Or there you go, Accenture or PwC or IBM, go do this, right? And so they don't really get involved. So that was the challenge. And what we wanted to do, Bright Line, the way I kind of think of it, is the line from converting ideas into reality, project management, execution, delivery, competency and capability, and that vision. It's the line that takes you from one to another. And we did a lot of research over the last 2 years to really understand. And a lot of organizations do that. A lot of strategy houses do that. But the difference between us and those strategy houses, which we work with, is that we're doing it while sitting on the side of the enterprise, not for an economic reason. We're not doing it. There's no monetization profit involved in Brightline, for us. So we're actually trying to say that, and what we learned is that a lot of the work that's happening in Brightline focusing on transformation. The C-suite is thinking about transformation, which is very complex. It's not just implement an ERP system. It's all the peripherals that go around it, the people impacts, the global impacts, the other systems and processes, the workflow, the people, the project, process, the etc. It's a very complex thing. So what we're trying to do is create that line. We're going to do that we're at a stage now where people are taking us seriously. We've been at Davos, we've worked with BCG, we've got some fantastic relationships at C-suite, and they see that we are like sitting on their side of the table, saying these are some of the considerations from projects that have failed, transformations that have failed. $1 trillion a year is wasted on failed projects, transformation projects. $1 trillion. There's a lot of learning in that. And so we've been able to package all of that, and we created the 10 guiding principles, one of which is the biggest one. And I've done 3 transformations myself, digital. The biggest one is keep your people engaged, and don't rely too much. And you may not agree to this, but don't rely too much on contractors. Don't rely too much. Get them to do the work, but you own it as the employee, because ultimately they'll be gone, and you've got to lead it. And the success for a business project manager is that the project that they've executed is adopted. When it's adopted and is put into production, then you can shout from the houses and say, right, I did this. But if you just execute the program and say thank you very much and walk off, and then assume that it's just, you can't use that as a reference. You can use it as a reference when the chap says, hey, these guys implemented this project and it's working and all my team are using it and we're happy. And so that's what Brightline is trying to address, is to give guidance, to say there are certain things that are super important that often get overlooked. Reliance on contractors, because this has happened to us in PMI in the time that I've been here. We didn't drink our own Kool-Aid. We allowed one of our contractors to walk out, and we now want to make some changes, and we have to call them back in again because they didn't. So is that our failing, or is it the contractors failing for making sure that we're not enabled enough to be able to make those changes ourselves? So it's questionable. But I think that's one key lesson we learned. The other one is that you obviously need to have tremendous C-suite, sponsorship. Without that, it's just not going to happen. And sense of urgency comes with that. So our Brightline Compass, that if you go on the website, you'll see some fantastic insights taken from real live programs that have been successful and real live programs that have failed. And saying, okay, what can we learn from all of these, and how can we share that with everyone? And now what we're trying to do is build the stepping stones from transformation, from project management and the PMP, with what we're hoping will be like small steps that will take us closer and closer and closer to the chief strategy officer, and then that will create the Brightline. That's Brightline.
It's very interesting that you mentioned it yourself. When looking at the recent developments within PMI and under your leadership, one really gets the feeling that this is a Brightline project in itself.
It is. It's my Lighthouse Brightline project. PMI transformation. We call it 2.0. Mm-hmm. When I came for my interview 14 months or so ago, I was asked by the board, what do you think about 2.0? And I looked at the long list, and I was like, I'm not going to be able to go home here. This is crazy. Are you sure you're going to be able to do all of this? you know, it has been an incredible 2019. We have, you know, I mean, again, going back to what Oliver said earlier, stepping back and looking at what we've achieved, and there's more to do, and not everything has landed, and you know, projects are in flight, but you know, a lot of delivery has been done. One of the big things that's happened, you probably all would have seen, is you can see it in the communication. There is a lot happening everywhere, and I think that's dangerous too. So especially now with this COVID thing, which nobody expected, we probably, one of the challenges that we see with COVID is that with people working remotely, it's very difficult for them to switch off. So people are working, you know, 24/7, and they're sitting in front of their laptops, which is not very healthy. So productivity might go through the roof, but efficiency doesn't. Efficiency starts to lag behind a little bit, and then eventually it's dangerous because people get, you know, mentally it's a problem. I started to get a bad back. I'm putting on weight. Don't get time to get away. And sort of sob stories happening to everyone, right? It's very difficult to merge the two together. Now, that has an effect on projects. That has an effect on the work that you do, and we've seen it within PMI that we've had to you know, work within those new boundaries, and that has meant consequences. Some of them very, very good. Some of them we've had to delay, and then we have to work with what we've got.
I'd like to pick up on a word that you used a bit earlier, and that's the word transformation. You talked about transformation in the context with Brightline, and you talked about digital transformation. I think we have a similar transformation that we want to bring into organizations as well. Maybe we don't use the term often enough, but it's a cooperative transformation where we tell organizations you can't do it alone. If you look at all those challenges that you have concurrently, cultural, political, financial, whatever it is, technical, of course, yeah, you cannot manage them all alone. You will need help. You will need to cooperate with others. And we're not talking about different things. We're talking about different aspects of the same thing. We look from different sides on the same thing, how the world is changing today. And this again leads me to another activity of PMI. That's the UN Global Compact, where PMI is in a cooperative activity, I think with 9,500 organizations or something like that. And it's about sustainable development goals. Now the question is, what does this really mean in practice?
Yeah, so you know, that's one of the other reasons why I was very, you know, honored to take this post, because PMI is truly a purpose organization, and I think that the way organizations are starting to reevaluate themselves, the value has always been monetary, right? And I think that the world is changing. Enterprises are now saying, okay, the first thing that is important, and you heard it during COVID, is our people. So our people and the safety of our people is important. The second thing is sustainability, not just sustainability of the enterprise, the organization. Can we sustain ourselves? Because you can have whatever social responsibilities and views that you want to do, but if you can't sustain yourself as an organization, you can't influence these other things. You're not there anymore because you're not sustainable. So having sustainability of your organization, which means, you know, perhaps making a commercial return. And then the third area, which is what you're talking about here, is a social responsibility. You know, and I think that what you're going to see is organizations will be valued, economically valued differently going forward. They'll be valued on how they treat their talent and their people. They'll be valued on profit, and they'll be valued on their social responsibility, not social agenda, social responsibility, true responsibility. And I'm really proud about PMI because the work we did with the United Nations last year, where we said that we will work with the SDGs, and we commit, you know, we set up we got the whole community engaged to contribute, you know, man hours of effort, and we set ourselves a target and say, you know, if we can get to 50,000, it'll be fantastic, a lovely contribution. We tripled that. We got to 150,000, and it's still growing, you know. And so I'm very, very, very proud of the community for doing that. There's 17 SDGs. We continue to work, and now there's one, the 17, number 10 is all around equality. And so we're now focusing, as you will have seen recently, quite a lot of work around, I mean, there's a lot of stuff happening in the US and around the world about equality right now. I don't want to get into that because people have very strong feelings, but we're trying to do our little bit in that space. And, you know, we've set up a D&I community that's going to try and, you know, focus on one of those SDGs, which is the number 10, which is all around equality. But I do fully believe that it's a very special part of PMI. We're a purpose organization, not a profit organization. And I call it the 3 Ps. It's people first. Obviously, we're a profit organization, but we're not a not-for-profits organization, but we're not for losses. So when you look at organizations and how they're going to be valued, there are 3 Ps. I think that people, profit, and then planet. And I think that
some profit is not greed, it's need. First
it's
of all.
need, yeah. So
need.
you know,
You have to separate need and greed. Yeah, and it's about need.
That's right. So I look forward to an organization that's market cap has been based on its responsibility to to the globe, its social responsibility, and then it's also on its economic viability as well as how it treats its people.
Yeah.
Because talent has choice, right? Talent will grab, and if you look at youth today, you know, there are other things than profit that are important for them, like, for example, you know, global warming and other things. So if you want to, and talent can walk, it can take its talent wherever it wants, you know, and will want to work for organizations and be associated with projects where those projects are meaningful. So I think that you're going to see this migration of talent to those more socially responsible organizations.
Yeah. I'm a father of 4 and a grandfather of 2, so sustainability and all the things that you're talking about really lie at my heart. But I wouldn't want to go that much into the future with my last question. My last question is very simple. Take a time frame of 5 years, so that's 2025. In your ideas, in your imagination, where will PMI be in 2025?
Okay, I'm assuming that we can get our heads around COVID, and I'm assuming that we can have a recovery of the economy. I think we can play a part in that as project managers and as folks who execute programs. I think that in 5 years' time, there's no reason why we can't be a very digital organization that's really driven by insights from using technology like AI, etc., to really get to the heart of what our community is looking for. I think that we will be expanding beyond the word project. I think that we will go into, and we'll expand beyond project managers. We will move into the world of change maker, which is a much bigger community. All employees will be having some degree of project management skill sets in what they do. So whether you're working in finance or in marketing, whatever you study, there will be an element of project execution capability. The ways of working will be embedded in there. I think that we will have fantastic insights from all different industries, all different communities, academia, on the best ways of getting work done. I think we will be delivering that information digitally. I think we'll be almost like the Wikipedia. I don't like to use the word Wikipedia, but let's call it the digital encyclopedia of all things project. We want to be able to do that for people from the age of 5 all the way through to the age of 75 and beyond, to be relevant at any stage in their career, in their life, in getting things done, whether you are organizing a holiday for your family and a complex, tour around 10 different countries, or you're implementing an ERP system, or you're building a bridge, or you're using a team of people who have never created an application to create an application in no-code, low-code capabilities. So we want to be the place you go to for advice, content, experience, knowledge, community, network, the go-to place, the first place that you go. That's what we see in 5 years' time. I think we'll get there before then.
Perfect. So, okay, unfortunately, this very much wraps up our very lively hour.
No, it can't do. I have one more question for you guys.
Okay.
You've been on the grill here, so let me ask you guys a question.
With pleasure.
Your organization, is relatively new, and you're really in a very nice area that will certainly develop tremendous amount of interest. What are your plans for the next couple of years? What are you planning to do, and how do you see my organization working with you to do that? That's let me push that to Oliver first, and then let's see, Martin.
Sounds good.
Yeah. That's a good question, and I'm not prepared for that. What we are interested in is a group of people. It's people who PMI has not put a focus on. You have to focus on certain people. And I remember when I heard your first speech in Dublin, I think that was the first time that we met. You talked about sharpening the focus, which means there are some people outside your focus. That's a normal process. That's natural. So what I see is, also from my own experience, I come from the world of project business. What I see is we have a group of people out there who need to be more the focus of help in the end, of activities, of helpful activities. This includes things like training and consulting, all those things. But it's also scientific research, literature, and so on. There's almost nothing there. It's very, very empty. The field is empty. No university has a study program for project business. And then look at project economy, one of your favorite words. Project business is an essential element of the project economy, because it is where people and where organizations exchange money for project work. So we need to focus more on that, and that's our topic. And I think we are a young organization. Absolutely, we started technically December last year, and we went public February this year. So we are very, very young, and of course, obviously, very small still, which has disadvantages, but it also has advantages. It gives us a lot of freedom, and you can go through learning processes. So what we see is where our focus is, and to sharpen this focus as well. We have a clear audience now, which has two sections. One section is project managers who do projects for paying customers. They manage not cost centers, but profit centers, and their job is to bring money home. It's the happy customer, but it's also profitability. And another very important aspect is liquidity, to focus on liquidity, cash flow. The contractor may lay out money for the customer. What is if this money comes back late? Maybe will never come back at all. On the other side, we have a situation. I was there in 30 years ago, when in automotive industry and production, modern supply chain management had its start. It began with it was called extended workbench, where you did work inside, and some work items were given outside, but you had to explain, why do you give this outside? Now we have a different situation. We have complex supply networks, including IT projects. I did some analysis on failed big ERP implementations. And if you look, where do they fail? It's not the technology. It's the interfaces between the organizations involved. It's the different business interests, plus time zones, plus corporate culture, sometimes national culture, different legal systems, and whatever you have. That's a huge, huge topic. And this side is also important, because no one is really taking care of them at the moment. So these are our two audiences, and for a small organization like us, this is huge.
But that's exactly where, Oliver, on that last point, we can really work together, because I think a lot of what we do with Brightline,
absolutely,
and our ways of working are really focusing on things like the softer skills, that you need beyond the crusty development skills, or the project management skills. It's the other, we talked about it, adoption, success should be in adoption. That's when you measure your success, it shouldn't be on how much money you made, or it's true enablement. When there's adoption and it's seamless and it's work that you put in place, that's when you can walk away, and you will have a customer that will love to give you a reference 9 times out of 10. Absolutely. Because they're happy with what you've done. I think that achieving that, and then having to make money at the same time, and understanding your commercials, that's how we started today's conversation. That's critical. You're right. In some of the projects, which are construction projects, where it's piecemeal payments and payment on delivery and stuff like that, it's tough. You have to manage it. How do you do that? And that's what we talked about. For large organizations, it's okay, because they have a portfolio of clients, and some of them are paying and some of them are not. And you can even afford to lean forward and take a risk on some projects, because the value to your brand is worth the loss that you're going to make. So you can make those. But when you're a startup, or you're small, only 200-300 people, you can't make those kind of decisions. That's where the larger players, the IBMs, the large construction companies can take risks that you can't take as an individual. So understanding your commercials, your numbers, absolutely great that you're working in that space. Great that you're explaining that to your team and advocating that, because it's a critical skill set. Nothing to do with project management, but an important skill set nonetheless, right? So, yeah. And being a finance guy, of course, I'm going to say that.
Perfect.
You know what I'm talking about? Yes, of course. Yes, of course. Project managers are not prepared for that. On both sides.
Let me add to what Oliver already said. Basically, how do we approach serving this community? And community is the key word here. When we started out, we had a pretty good idea of what we wanted to achieve, and we quickly had to pivot ourselves and learned that, especially boosted by the whole COVID-19 situation, community is front and center in what we do. We have started open hours that happen frequently, and people just gather with no specific topic of conversation. And as soon as we start off, the conversation is off to a crazy start, and everyone just feels so happy that finally they have someone to talk with and about something. And mostly a lot of these project managers who have been working in cross-corporate projects have had a very strong background in project management in general, but they haven't had too many people to talk to and exchange thoughts with on their very specific cross-corporate projects that are on top of what everyday project management entails anyway. So we have seen that there is a huge interest and a huge demand, and it's a great pleasure to actually serve that. So we are basically there to support it.
Yeah, and I seriously, I see fantastic synergies, and there's a lot we can share from each other.
Yeah. The other thing is, there is some area where we go out of where PMI is, and that's the area of business development. Project business does not begin with a project charter. It begins with a make or buy decision on customer side when the customer says, we're going to buy. This is the moment when the process begins. So it is much, much earlier than where project management is. So we have some overlap. We have some common.
That's very complementary to us, because as we start to reach out to beyond project managers to change makers, we ourselves have to learn how to. If you think about, and I don't know how much time we've got, but if you think about PMI over the last 50 years, we've been really serving our own community, built fantastic relationships and personal friends for life throughout the whole PMI community. But very rarely have we gone. We've been farming our own community, so to speak. Farming our own community. Everyone, when I say project management, everyone knows what I mean by that. But when you go outside of our community, you're in a hunting space. You're now communicating to people and saying, hey, let me tell you what project management is. And then you go to environments and communities that never heard of PMI, and they're saying, why should I sit and spend 10 minutes talking to you? I'm a busy man or a busy woman, and I need. Why should I speak to you, Sunil?
Yep.
And when you're moving, that's business development. So I think that you're absolutely right, and that's another area where we could certainly collaborate, and we could learn from you on how we as an organization reach out beyond and have a bigger influence over the next 5 years to a more diverse and greater audience.
Cool.
That sounds absolutely perfect.
Great. So I'm here for any questions if you've got any.
Perfect, wonderful. Actually, we have gathered and collected all the questions that have rolled in the Q&A tab, and we will address them accordingly. And well, maybe we are in luck and we can persuade you to come back for a follow-up conversation in which we can focus on a deeper Q&A session and well, kind of dig deeper in some of the areas that we have just touched upon today.
Yeah, we can do that, or I can invite you to have sit on one of my straight talks at PMI, and
that would be perfect.
And I can sit on that side of the fence there and grill you with lots of questions.
You have already done that today.
Good. So yeah, of course. Thank you for the opportunity. Thanks to the audience. As I said earlier, I hope you're all safe, and your families and friends are all safe too. I think it's a pleasure, Oliver, to address your community, and I hope that they got something out of what we're trying to do. And if there are any questions, if we're out of time, then flick them over to me, and I'll make sure that we get answers to those for you. And
wonderful,
people.
Yeah, perfect. So thank you very much, Sunil, for taking the time and for the interview. And
you're welcome.
A big thank you as well to our audience.